Yes, thank you. We paused briefly in between the town assessor and the town justices, and now we'll be resuming our budget workshop with the town justice portion, and we'll be hearing from Judge Swinton.
All right, just to make it clear too, I'm early, not late. So, okay.
You are early.
And I'm alone. Judge Scagnelli is on the bench across the hall. So, first time in my 16 years doing this, we're going to be over budget. We have always been under budget. We got a little blown out this year on the interpreter. I think we always keep more money in there than we spend. A lot of our other lines we've reduced over the years based on what our actual spend has been. The interpreter one we had kept high because it's very unpredictable. This is the year that proves it's unpredictable. So we had a jury trial, went on for about 5 days with interpreters needed for all of the witnesses. So we ended up being 150% of our budget in one trial because we needed live interpreters. For the most part, we use a telephone service, which is much cheaper. It's pennies per minute, and it lets us get almost any language we need. So that's a line that I don't think we necessarily have to. We have it budgeted right now for $1,000. This one trial was like, I think you saw it was like $1,500. I don't think we necessarily have to change what we're budgeting, but I definitely don't want to reduce it in case we get other such things coming. That was really kind of a standout, but the other lines, for the most part, we were looking to keep the same. We were looking to increase the supplies and materials to 2,000. We're high on that this year. So we actually had moved some money out of another line into that, but we're now out of money in the other lines to move around. So that's what I'm saying. For this first time in 16 years, we're actually going to be over. We had been cutting a lot of the lines, and I think this is just a year that it kind of all caught up to us. We were high on materials, we're high on translations. So other than that, I think no major changes. Training and memberships, we were going to reduce to, or going to keep it, we're going to drop to 500, right? Other than that, we were looking to increase police overtime a little bit, $1,000 to $21,000. And that's all the non-personnel lines that I have. Everything's pretty much the same. Two things I wanted to raise with the personnel ones. We were putting in for an increase on the town justice line of $5,000. It's like 8 years ago, we had gone to the board and asked for an increase from $30,000 to $35,000. We were told, yes, but we'll do it in 2 steps. We did the first step, and it's been 7 years waiting on the second step. So we raise it every other year. We only raise that in the odd years when one of us is up for election, with the idea that we never want to ask for a raise when we're guaranteed to get it. So that's the renewed pitch this year for that. The other one, which is the bigger number, is for the full-time clerk lines, or full-time clerk line, looking to reclassify them from grade 11s to grade 13s. We just went through a kind of tortured process trying to fill that position. It's very difficult to get anyone for any position, as I'm sure you're all aware. Getting folks with actual court experience in, even harder. There aren't that many of them, and we pay less than what a lot of them are already making. The other thing I'm trying to plan out is making sure we have a continuance of well-trained court clerks. We just went through 2 retirements of our 2 full-timers. What saved us was we had a part-timer who had 18 years in as a part-timer, who was fully trained and basically just stepped in, Kelly Wetzel. But she and our other clerk will probably be retiring in the not too distant future. So I want to make sure we'll be able to backfill those positions, and I want to get someone qualified in now into the 3rd position. So that's the pitch. When we went through everything, I think we looked at, with everything we're asking for, it ends up being 11.55% increase. Right, I think it was a total increase of 29,612 based on my notes.
So Judge Swinton, it sounds like the clerk positions are maybe in a somewhat similar situation as water and sewer, where
I have no idea.
we spoke about it earlier, where maybe the salaries are not aligned with other municipalities, and we're not able to recruit the type of talent we need.
Correct. With this last round that when we'd gone through, I won't tell the other judges in the county, I had tried to steal a couple of clerks from other courts and was turned down. Ideally, we would like to get someone who has court clerk experience. There's a lot of systems they have to know. It's a fairly steep and long learning curve. So just like a lateral police officer, if we can get someone who's already up to speed on most of what we do, it's a huge time saver for us. We're not drawing down our current clerks to train new clerks. So that's kind of that's the pitch. And if we do have 2 more retirements in the not too distant future in close succession, I want to make sure we can fill those as quickly as we can.
And I appreciate you, bringing the discussion of elected officials' compensation. That $5,000 increase, $2,500 per judge, is about an 8% increase. And as you said, that was discussed previously. And I'm a big supporter of having a committee take a look at the elected officials all within town hall, doing an analysis. So it's not linked to election cycles. It should not be, and it should be based on data. And I'm recommending a pause on those types of salary increases until we form that committee and have an analysis of all the elected official positions in Niskayuna and analyze the job responsibilities, the compensation, and do a cross-municipal comparison so that we can make those recommendations, or
Sure.
so that committee can make the recommendations, because I do recognize, like, your time is valuable. Justice Scagnelli's time is valuable. And we want to make sure that the compensation can also, help attract candidates who might run in the future, and make it so it's an opportunity for anyone to run for that position. So I'm glad you were bringing that up. And I'm also glad to hear about the clerks and get a better understanding of that, because succession planning is important. We're experiencing that in the building department as well. We are, looking at hiring another part-time building inspector, because our current building inspectors will be retiring eventually, and we need to plan for that. So I definitely will, I'm in support of making that adjustment for the preliminary budget for the clerks.
I appreciate that.
And
I have no problem with a pause on our compensation. Like I said, we've had a 7-year pause. So
Yes.
it makes no real difference in the end. And I think that's probably a good way to do it. And that's how that was our pitch 8 years ago, was we were the
Yes.
second lowest paid judges in the county. So we got the half increase. I think we are now, again, the second lowest paid judges in the county. So, I mean, and part of the problem is elected official salaries, you don't get the COLA, there's no steps, there's nothing like that. So it's sometimes many years in between.
22
resetting
in the
them.
case of, yeah. So
Then I won't complain about 7.
you are not complaining. No, it's good. I think it's a worthy conversation to have.
Yeah, and the math, it works out to just about, I think, $20,000 is what we were ballparking, although we might have to now retweak based on a third position, empty or vacant, for the clerk line. It would be a 20, like about across three positions. So it's 5 to 7-ish, something like that for each one of the positions, depending on the step that clerks would come in on or are at.
Judge, going back to the court clerks and making that, I guess, a more competitive position, do you know how our court clerk salaries compares to neighboring municipalities and then clerks with the state or with OCA, how it all compares?
OCA paid clerks, I believe we are significantly below. And there may be nothing you can do about that because the way, obviously, the state is the state. So you have New York City clerks and you have upstate clerks, and they're roughly the same grade. There might be a geographic differential or something like that, but they're probably going to be paid on average more than a locally funded court clerk.
So I guess then what about in comparison to other neighboring municipalities?
I can only base it on the clerks that I've tried to steal. We paid less.
Less.
And that's why they're not here. Or at least part of the reason they're not here. We do pay more than some of the courts for some of the clerks. I mean, again, I think some of them have part-time, some of them have full-time. I think there's differences in steps that they're at.
So it sounds like it's definitely worth then analyzing the salary of other clerks in towns or municipalities locally and making our positions more competitive to prepare for those future retirements. I mean, I think you have a lot of knowledge in your court now. And if we have two retirements coming up, we're going to lose that.
And I'm only talking about the clerks. As any honest judge will tell you, the clerks run the court completely. They run everything day to day. They're what keeps the books balanced and everything straight with DCJS, everything straight with DMV. We just show up for the unpleasant stuff. But yeah, it's a very critical position. And sometimes they're handling lots of money. I mean, there's that whole aspect to it. So
It's very confidential information.
yes, I mean, we sealed files, search warrants, all that kind of stuff. It requires somebody we can trust completely. And we have to trust them completely. Town judges are personally liable for financial misdeeds of their clerks, which is part of the reason they're generally hired and fired at the discretion of the judges, because we have to really trust them. So that's where we are.
Yeah, having a succession plan is very important because,
None of us gets out of here alive.
no,
So there's always going to be somebody after you, and you want to leave it as good for them as you possibly can.
I want to go to the fines, forfeiture, and the justice court fund. Now, it's been increased from 80 to 125. You think
What are you
that's
talking about? Revenue you're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you think that's realistic? I mean, that's why I'm asking about it.
Based on actuals that we're seeing.
Yeah. So there was a huge drop off, actually started at about 2018. We started seeing a drop off in penal law cases, vehicle and traffic cases. COVID obviously obliterated most courts in terms of number of tickets, number of cases, and revenue. It has picked up significantly over the past year, I would say, maybe a little bit more than a year.
It's A0025. I'm sorry, 26.
And again, that's me ballparking it based on just the number of tickets we get, the number of cases we have on a criminal night, for example. We are collecting a smaller share of the fines that we put on tickets because the state legislature removed the ability to suspend someone's license for failure to pay a fine, a surcharge. So used to be someone would not pay, they'd get a suspension notice, they'd come running in, pay. It's like, I forgot about it, whatever. Can't suspend anymore for failure to pay a fine. So we have people that just won't pay a fine because they know they won't get suspended. They have people that they forgot about it and now they don't get the suspension notice.
So now there's like a lot of uncollected,
There's a tremendous amount of
Fines.
uncollected money. At some point, I imagine the state is going to realize, because they get the lion's share of a lot of this. At some point, I imagine they're going to realize they have a lot less money coming in and maybe make an adjustment to that.
Yeah, and I just want to let you know where my math came from. We had budgeted to collect 80,000 this year. As of August, we had already collected $89,514, and we still have a good portion of the year left. And what I did was basically take where we were at the time I did this and just extrapolate through the end of the year. And based on that, I expect 125,000 is probably approximately where we're going to land this year. So that's what I projected for next year. So that's where that number came from.
okay.
And just for perspective, if you weren't here a number of years ago or don't remember, we used to turn over about $600,000 a year.
Wow, I didn't realize it was that high. I mean, as far back as I could, it was like 200.
No, it was 25 to 30,000 per judge per month we would turn over. So that's the kind of dip, and the vast majority of that is vehicle and traffic. A lot of the criminal cases, like they don't have big fines, or they're converted to civil judgments because the person's going to be incarcerated and they can't pay a fine. The vast majority of that is vehicle and traffic. And you can come see the drawers of unpaid tickets. It's significant. We just had an audit by OCA came in, and their recommendation is convert these to civil judgments. So some of them we are. So there's a process. You convert it to a civil judgment, gets recorded with the county clerk, and it's not a suspension notice, but at some point you go to sell your house, can't sell your house because there's an unsatisfied judgment against you. Technically, the state can collect on the civil judgments. They can garnish any tax refunds. So the money some of it will start coming in based on the civil judgments, but I don't think it will be anywhere near as much as you would get when you get the suspension notice and people just come in and they pay.
Right, right.
But
That's more work for your office if you have to convert these to civil judgments, correct?
I just signed 300 of them like last month. Right. And then they have to get bundled up and brought down to the district attorney's office, who brings them to the county clerk. And right, there's a whole process, and it's arduous. And
how does that revenue ever get back to the town?
they will find out they've got an unsatisfied judgment with the county clerk. The county clerk will tell them who it is. It's the town of Niskayuna, and they come in and they pay. And then we have to sign a release. So then there's more paperwork that makes its way back down so that the county clerk can lift that civil judgment.
But that won't happen until that individual goes to purchase a house or
Until that,
something.
right, go to get a mortgage, do something that's going to flag the fact that you've got an unsatisfied judgment.
So it could be years and years before that would ever happen.
It will be years and years for some of them, for sure.
So, and how is your caseload? I mean, do you track that also?
Yes. I didn't bring that file. But that's how we were able to see, because when we saw the real low numbers in COVID, we wanted to see when it actually started. It actually started before COVID, but it's picked back up since. But it was a dramatic, it was down to 20% of, at the base of COVID, it was about 20% of what we were seeing before. Mostly vehicle and traffic, that's the biggest hit. Penal law cases, criminal cases, they also decreased, not as much. I think there's just less discretion with the penal law stuff. You're going to have to make an arrest. So I think that's it. But both have increased over the past year and a half.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
What? He didn't.
He hasn't asked
Maybe
it
I
yet.
couldn't ask it anymore. So this provides for your department, yes?
This provides for the department.
Okay.
Yes.
Question has been asked. Thank you. Any other questions?
No, thank you, Judge.
Okay.
Thank you, Judge
Thank you.
Swinton. Appreciate it. All right, that is all we have for tonight's budget workshops. we will be reconvening on October 10th for the next budget workshop. 10 a.m. Thank you. I was just logging in. My computer went to sleep. The next budget workshop is on October 10th at 10 a.m. And then the final budget workshop will be on October 11th starting at 4 p.m. All right. Thank you.